By now, you should be aware that I am I'm a whore for a good Wharny. Something about the looks and the lines and cutting performance of a good Wharncliffe really tingles my Pringle can, if you know what I mean. The Spyderco Yojimbo 2 was my first real love affair with the Wharny, and after that, I couldn't buy up enough Wharnies to keep my infatuation under control. But as is usually the case, with there being as many knives and knife makers out there, I have not and will never be able to see, buy, or handle every single straight-edge, razor-sharp Wharncliffe on the market. So when this little beauty showed up in the Apex Passaround Group, I got right the f***ing line. This is the Damn Designs Fenrir, a budget-friendly G10 D2 liner lock flipper that hits that Wharny-obsessed part of my brain like a freight train. Now, prior to this piece showing up, I really hadn't paid a whole lot of attention to Damn Designs. It's very vulgar, if you ask me. Very vulgar name. I had seen his work scattered across my Instagram feed for a while now, but I guess I never stopped to take a closer look. In the past, it seems they focused more on higher-end pieces made out of higher-end materials, but only recently announced these budget-friendly options in G10 with the D2 blades. And boy, what an option it is. The G10 scales have a nice heavy chamfering all around the edges on both sides, which looks nice and clean and helps with the in-hand comfort. The pivot on the show side is this massive, wild, hexagonal piece that has this kind of clean and simple machined pattern on it. At first, I wasn't sure how I felt about that pivot, but it has honestly grown on me over the past week or so. Hardware-wise, there's really not a lot to talk about. Just the pivot and the clip screws on the show side, and on the clip side, same story. Pivot screw, 2 clip screws. And that clip is, well, it's interesting to say the least. It's a nicely done and extremely deep carry clip, finished with a nice kind of subtle stone wash to match the hardware. It carries extremely well and it's a breeze in and out of the pocket, but it has, it has tits. Or butt cheeks. I'm really not sure what the end goal was with this, but love it or hate it, the clip works, and at the end of the day, it's something different. There is a nice looking and nicely jimped backspacer with the space for a lanyard, if that's your kind of thing, and overall it's pretty clean and straightforward on the handles. But opening this piece up, we are met with this obscenely straight and obnoxiously pointy D2 Wharncliffe, and I f***ing love it. The blade is finished in this really heavy stone wash to hide scratches or marring, and good God, I just love the way it looks. It's as Wharny as a Wharny can be, but like the handles, the blade is just that. It's a blade. Everything aesthetically on this piece is no nonsense. Outside of the pivot and the nutsack on the pocket clip, it's just as clean and as simple a piece as one could imagine. It's just a clean and simple piece. And I like that in a, budget-friendly user. I'm gonna beat the snot out of it anyway. Now then, before my head explodes, let's move on to that blade. Oh baby, that blade was made to cut. That D2 Wharny is rocking a nice tall flat grind that comes about 90-95% of the way up the height of the exceptionally tall blade. The blade stock is pretty hardy, but that final cutting edge is good and thin. And I have just been cutting up every piece of paper and every piece of cardboard I can get my hands on since this arrived. And yes, this is a true Wharny. Crazy pointy tip, laser beam straight cutting edge, check and check. And like any true Wharny, the tip is uber dainty, so keep that in mind before you try cracking open a paint can with this one. All in all, great looks, great grind work, and excellent cutting performance. I love this blade. Moving on to the ergos, it's as comfy as it looks. The scales have been nicely knocked down thanks to that heavy chamfering we've talked about before. We've got some nice jimping on the blade spine that plays its part very well, and all in all, I can't find an uncomfortable way to hold this thing. The tall handles fill the hand really well, and that titty clip hasn't caused any hot spots for me during use. And we do have a small sharpening choil, but no real finger choil, unfortunately. That being said, I feel so locked in on this knife, on those handles, that I never feel like I'm lacking any kind of blade controller. I'm never lusting for more. It is simply a comfortable knife to hold and to use. No more and no less. And finally, the action. Well, this is a flipper, and it is a liner lock, and it is running on bearings. All great things. I have a really hard time failing. Like, a really hard time. And that's a good thing. That D10 is dialed the f*** in, making the flipping action endlessly reliable and good and snappy. But the Fenrir here has some secret goodies tucked away. You can totally reverse flick this thing. Thanks in part to the way the grind is done, and thanks to the fact that we have such a decent amount of blade sticking up out of the scales, It honestly, it's stupid easy to thumb flick and insanely easy to reverse flick this thing. You can Spidey flick it, no hole needed, and it's just as satisfying as the flipping action. So even though it might not look like it, this thing fidgets with the best of them, and those bearings are good and smooth, so on the close that big D2 Wharny swings shut with a surprising level of grace, nice and smooth, and good and drop shutty on the close. Overall, a wonderful action, a smooth operator, and I have been thoroughly impressed. So where does all this leave us with the damn designs, Fenrir and G10 and D2? Well, I'm a fan. A good Wharncliffe is usually more than enough to get me to dig out my credit card, but everything else here is so well done on top of that beautiful Wharny. God, it cuts like a dream, the action is fidgety and satisfying, it carries really well, and it feels great in the hand. But, and this might just be me, the aesthetics are where this one lets me down. I think it looks good opened up with that pointy D2 blade out for the world to see, but closed up, it's almost too clean, it's almost too simple, too watered down. And I've been looking at the fancy pants carbon scales variant, you know, the one with the titanium and the and I'm in love with it, which, you know, maybe makes me insane. It's literally the same knife, but the plain Jane black G10 scales just don't get me going like that Buckwild carbon fiber option does. It's an amazing knife, don't get me wrong, and it's an amazing price point. There's no doubt about it, but I would like to see some more intrigue. Just a touch of extra insanity. I'm gonna beat the shit out of either way. I know it doesn't matter, but on a future G10 variant, Mr. Damned, if that's your name, maybe get a little wild with it. Just a thought. So until next time, thank you for watching. Bye-bye now.